Shadow of Mordor is a video game. It isn't trying to be anything else. I don't hate games that are trying to do more, but sometimes I just want to play a good old school gamey game. Something that isn't trying to take me on a discovery of self or a transcending masterpiece. No, sometimes I just want to make orcs' heads explode. Middle-earth, trademark, Shadow of Mordor, trademark, is now 10 years old, and while it has many flaws, it is still an amazing experience that provides a different perspective to the stories of J.R.R. Tolkien's expansive world. So how good is Shadow of Mordor really? Let's find out as we delve deep into this decade-old game and relive a truly great moment in gaming. This is Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor 10 years later. TM. Quick spoiler warning, as there will be spoilers throughout most of the video, but I will warn you when I'm about to go deep on major late game spoilers to help you avoid them. Oh, and also, I apologize for my voice. I've got a little bit of a cold, but if you're annoyed about the whiny timbre of my voice and things, yeah, that's just how I sound. I can't really change that. I'm sorry. Shadow of Mordor opens with an interesting set of cutscenes, setting up the world and its characters. The weakening Gondor stands guard over a threat that has all but been forgotten. For 2,500 years, the Black Gate has been guarded by the Rangers, to whom our main character, Talion, belongs. Sauron returns to Mordor, and here is where our story starts. We get a few flashbacks as we learn the basic mechanics of the game throughout a tutorial phase that is rather well disguised. It feels a part of the world as opposed to it being a tutorial. We fight through an invading Uruk force to attempt to save our family. This adds emotional weight to our character and makes us feel for him almost immediately. While the story of Shadow of Mordor is definitely no masterpiece, it can still evoke feelings of sadness, anger, and a willingness to do what is necessary. As we cut from flashback to the present, Talion is faced with his own death at the hands of the Black Hand, asking,
"What has happened to me?"
You are banished from death. Cast adrift between the worlds of light and dark. Curse binds us together within the walls of Ardar.
Introducing us to an elf spirit trapped in purgatory that is bonded with Talion's soul, rendering him immortal. Talion and his family are almost immediately murdered, which is obviously very inconvenient. The Elf Lord explains that they are binded by a curse from the Black Hand of Sauron, a curse from which Talion wants to break to be freed from his pain. We then look out over the world in which we must now conquer. I love this intro. It sets up everything perfectly. There is mystery, intrigue, and above all else, purpose for our story. Who is this Elf Lord? It turns out he doesn't even know himself. We must now fight our way through the armies of Mordor, attempting to get revenge for our family, our people, and to break the curse. This opening is spectacular, and while the intensity and excitement for the story falls flat for the rest of the first half of the game, it is still a great start that keeps you engaged until the story picks back up again. There are three main plot points and gameplay features that we must now follow. Firstly, we must traverse Mordor in search of artifacts. Artifacts our old friend Gollum seems to know the location of, helping because he is hoping to somehow get closer to his precious. Once found, these artifacts give us memories of this elf who turns out to be Celebrimbor, Elven Smith, the one who crafted the Rings of Power. Each artifact revealing more about his past and restoring memories to Celebrimbor. Another plot point is killing the war chiefs in the Nemesis system in order to get closer to the Black Hand. I will go more in depth on the amazing Nemesis system in a bit. Lastly, we are helping out other humans around Mordor. These three stories intertwine continuously and are interesting enough to keep you going. Let's talk about the combat. It starts off really basic, a block and an attack, but as the game goes on, Talion develops into a fully fledged war machine with a plethora of combat and stealth options. From crazy stealth bow actions that have you teleporting across the world, lopping Uruk's heads off, to super fast attacks that end in an orc's head exploding. And you're going to need all these tools if you're going to take down the frankly insane amount of enemies that can come at you all at once. The game is relatively difficult at first, but once you have a few abilities and have a bit more health, the game becomes a power fantasy to the fullest, where no one stands a chance of survival even if you glance in their direction. The combat is crunchy and it feels great. Basic attacks don't seem to do much damage on their own, so it's a combo system that is your best friend. Build it up by attacking without getting hit, and once it glows red you can perform an execution, or any other combo move such as crowd control blast or a combat brand, which you don't unlock until the second half of the game. Without using the combo system, you will quickly lose sight of the orc you've already hit a few times, and no one will be dying to you in the larger fights. Stealth is a very useful tactic in Shadow of Mordor, especially once you unlock some of the more useful stealth abilities like I mentioned before. Orcs are pretty stupid and incredibly blind, so stealthing around can be quite easy, but this all adds up to the power fantasy that you are unbeatable. The bow is useful in both stealth and combat, with an array of abilities to help you instantly kill many enemies. Charged headshots instantly kill all normal enemies and even some captains if they are weak to that. The bow also has limited time slow, which really helps with hitting headshots, especially if you're a bad aim like I am. The bow is a nice addition, and I think this game would be pretty stale without it. Now before we talk about the famous Nemesis system, I'd like to mention the legends that are dotted around the map. These are part of a series of challenges that reward you with points to spend on your health, bow, or rune slots, but forge a legend around the piece of equipment that you use for it. For instance, there are bow, sword, or dagger challenges, each unique and interesting with certain limitations placed on you. An example of this is a challenge where you must stay on a hilltop and slaughter a certain amount of orcs in the time limit, using only your bow. I like these challenges because they mix up gameplay and form unique experiences inside a game that can come a bit repetitive towards the end, once you figure out the perfect combo, and the rewards also seem worth it. The Nemesis system is an incredible system that has enemies that remember specific encounters and change depending on the outcome. If you ran from a battle with them, they remember and will taunt you about it the next time you meet. If you die to one, they increase in power and rank. Each interaction with an orc also has them develop different traits and weaknesses depending on the prior encounters with them. This system has many facets that are unique and interesting, offering different experiences for every player and upon replay of the game. Unfortunately, Warner Bros. Patented this system, so no one else can use it, but also refused to use it themselves, having only used it in the follow-up game Shadow of War, where it is even better than here in Mordor. You can interrogate orcs to find out different information about other orcs from the Nemesis system, and then use that information to your advantage. Each orc has strengths and weaknesses. Some can be instantly killed with charged headshots, and others are completely immune to any ranged attack. The Nemesis system adds so much life to the world and the gameplay, making you take on difficult foes in increasingly more difficult ways. But as I said, basically the game is pretty easy, so it won't hard lock you out of progress or anything. Basically, this system is the gravy that completes this roast, making the meat and vegetables taste even better. What is a roast without gravy? Absolutely pointless. I live in Britain, okay? I've adopted their love for roast dinner. Damn, I'm kinda hungry now. In the second half of the game, you acquire a skill to brand orcs, basically mind controlling them to your side. They will fight for you, kill other orcs for you, and even betray their war chief when the time is right.
Bring the ranger to me! Bring him in screaming! Oh, I'm gonna enjoy this!
This mechanic is useful in general combat and for navigating the Nemesis system. War chiefs are at the top of the system and have bodyguards which you can control. Once you control them, their men are yours too. When you go to take out a war chief, you can activate your brainwash orcs who will turn on their war chief and help you attempt to overthrow them. Then once you have defeated them, your brainwashed orc will become a war chief, getting you even closer to killing your main enemies. The boss battles in this game are a low point for sure. There are several main boss fights throughout the game that do not deliver. They are either glorified versions of normal battles or stripped down completely inferior versions of normal battles. I will talk more about this when we discuss the ending of the game. There are also quite a few collectibles, but they are all easily accessible and are plotted on your map, so collecting these won't be too much of a headache. The rewards for full completion are not worth it, so unless you're a completionist, I'd just grab these for the money you get if you happen to be passing by. Enjoying the video? Smash that like button for me if you will, I really appreciate it. Thanks. There isn't any collectible gear in this game. No outfits or cool swords, you're stuck with what you start with, but you can upgrade them in meaningful ways with the rune system. Again, this is far superior in the sequel, but still decent in Shadow of Mordor. Runes drop from any enemy that is on the Nemesis system, so captains and war chiefs. They grant special functions to already existing mechanics such as a percentage chance to restore elf shot if you blow up an orc's head, for example. I didn't really delve into it too much on my replay this time, as it just wasn't that great of a system, because I know that it's much better in the follow-up. I put on a few decent ones, but they ultimately didn't feel like they changed too much for me. I would have liked some cosmetic upgrades or something here too, maybe just appearance stuff for Talion. I understand why there are no other weapons, as it just wouldn't fit in the game, but I think cosmetics would be a happy middle ground. Now I'm going to talk about the story in general here and try to stay away from the specifics, so only minor spoilers in this part. The story content is only about 15 hours long, but for me, that is absolutely fine. This game released in 2014, when stupidly long games were rare and a 15 to 20 hour campaign was normal. I am always repeating quality over quantity. I would rather a 15-hour blast through this game than them pad it out with unnecessary bullshit. If you can tell the story perfectly in 15 hours, then that's what you should do. Obviously, price comes into play with these things, but about 50 to 60 pounds for a fantastic 15 hours is okay with me. I would rather that than have to wade through copious amounts of filler that was injected just to pad out the runtime. Now, the story itself is intriguing and interesting. I want to follow along and know more. But it's not going to change your life. It's not something special. It's just a decent story that pulls you along nicely throughout the game. As I mentioned earlier, near the end of the first half of the game, it starts to get a bit slow, but the second half picks right back up, introducing new and more interesting characters than in the first half. I was much more engrossed after the halfway point and enjoyed it even more than my first 8 hours or so. Following the story of Talion and Celebrimbor is fascinating, especially for someone who is in love with Lord of the Rings. Finding out who he was and what happened to him leads you further down the rabbit hole, wanting to know more. I am no lore buff. In fact, I know very little outside of what the film trilogy explains, but I like this little alternative story to Middle-earth. If you don't know, these games are not actually canon at all, so while they may contain truths, the story as a whole is not. But I can tell you one thing, this story is leagues above the Amazon TV show Rings of Power. For now, that's all I wish to say about the story until I talk about the ending. Shadow of Mordor consists of 2 maps that you spend about half the time in each. Udun is the first map and is a grungy, rundown, destroyed part of the world, taken over by evil and Sauron's forces. It evokes a sense of dread and despair, feelings that don't really leave you until you take down your first real boss and get to move to the new area, Nirn. While Nirn is still inhabited by armies of Uruks, it is lush and green, the evil not yet removing all of its beauty. It is literally a breath of fresh air as you emerge into this new map. Even though the gameplay here is much the same, you just feel freer. Color is allowed to exist here, and it makes a great contrast to the first area that you have just been in for 7 to 8 hours. You can freely travel between these worlds to complete challenges and collectibles. These worlds are pretty small, but are densely packed with places and things to do. However, their design doesn't really vary that much. You've seen one orc stronghold, you've kinda seen them all. Since this game is relatively short, it doesn't bother me too much, and the much larger sequel improves on this a lot. There are a few small areas designed strictly for a couple of boss fights which are interesting but are not used to their full potential at all. As a whole, the world is decent for the length of the game and didn't stop my enjoyment of the mechanics of the game. I lumped these categories together as I didn't have much to say about them. Compared to things like Assassin's Creed Unity, Watch Dogs, or Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, which also released in 2014, it pales in comparison, but the art direction is solid enough that it holds its own. Not the best, but does nothing to take away from the experience, so it really doesn't matter. Voice acting is superb. From all the different lines the orcs can say to Talion and his supporting cast, they are all brilliant. Even Gollum is surprisingly good, with only a hint that it isn't Andy Serkis himself. Music has a few standout tracks, but in moment-to-moment gameplay, I didn't really notice anything spectacular. It does its job well and set the tone for every moment in the game. Okay, let's talk about the ending of this game. Story-wise, the ending is great. Things are revealed that will shock you and turns the whole story on its head. I like that. It's pretty decent and the villains do a great job of being evil and making you really want to end them. It's cinematic and perfect for the story that they are trying to tell. All that part is great. The pacing of the storytelling is fantastic and is probably the highlight of the story. However, where it falls down is the actual gameplay. The boss battles with the main enemies are straight garbage. Absolute trash. I'm going to get into pretty deep late game spoilers now, so you may want to skip to the timestamp on screen or the next chapter. The 3 main attackers at the beginning of the game are your 3 main boss battles. You first face the Hammer of Sauron. It's a regular fight with normal enemies while you try and take him down slowly, as many types of attacks don't work on him. This is literally the same thing you've been doing with all the Orc war chiefs up until this point, except he's just a little stronger. You then face the Tower of Sauron, who reveals that Celebrimbor could leave Talion at any moment, and there is no curse holding him there. This revelation shakes the entire dynamic of the game. You've been fighting to get rid of a curse that does not exist, and your greatest ally has been lying to you. Storytelling wise, I am very happy with this, but again, the actual battle is just so bad. Like, I don't even know how it's so bad. You have to sneak around stealth branding him about 4 or 5 times, then you just stab him in a death cutscene. Yep, that's the entire boss fight. And eventually you meet the Black Hand of Sauron, the final boss of the game, the one who killed your family and set you down this path. The Black Hand slices his own throat, attempting to bring Celebrimbor back to him. He succeeds, revealing his true self to be Sauron in disguise. All this culminates in what would be an amazing dramatic showdown. However, it's nothing but a cutscene with QuickTime events. Yep, and to top it all off, the playable bit is about 30 seconds long. My guess would be that they ran out of dev time, and unfortunately it leaves a sour taste in your mouth at the end of what is otherwise an unforgettably fun romp through Middle-earth. The final cutscene shows Talion saying he cannot rest knowing he did not at least try to take down Sauron. Celebrimbor saying it cannot be done. Talion responds by perfectly setting up the sequel with a line that begs you to play the follow-up.
The time has come for a new ring.
Despite the lackluster ending with its bad boss battles, I would still recommend this game to anyone who enjoys this kind of thing, or loves this world. The game wasn't designed to have you coming back week after week for your daily login rewards. It wasn't designed to take advantage of your gambling or addictive natures. It wasn't designed to fleece you of every penny you own. Nope, they did that in the sequel instead. Shadow of Mordor was just designed to be fun, and boy howdy did they achieve that. I feel like it was designed by people who love games instead of by some corporate overlord. If you want a power trip over the disgusting creatures of Middle-earth, trademark, then Shadow of Mordor, trademark, is for you. Thanks to my Patreon, Alex Applegate, and thank you to everyone else who watched to the end. Sticks out.